Good morning, guys.
Such energy.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Great.
Yeah, rolling. We rolling. We're back again. We've been consistent with this thing. We've been doing it every week. We're going to keep it going.
Shuffling out people. I was out. Feel energized after being in the Bahamas. So
welcome back.
Yes,
Welcome
thank
back.
you.
Welcome back. We needed you back.
Golden tan.
Not as tan as I was hoping, but
It's winter.
all sun helps.
It's winter. I'm ready for spring. This cold stuff's for the birds.
It's almost over.
There was snow in Florida. Record snow in Florida.
Where?
Yeah, like 7 inches in Pensacola.
Yeah,
That's
legit. I think the previous record was 4 inches.
and that was what
Ever
in
on
the,
record.
in the 70s. Because I know it snowed in
Been
the
a long time.
70s, and then there was an old photo at Florida State of it snowing in like the 20s.
Wild.
Like
So
the
I was-
1920s?
Yeah, like I remember seeing the photo when it was an all-girls school and it was like just blanketed in snow. I'm like, when is that going to happen again? Well, it just did.
The roaring 20s.
Yes.
The good old days. Yeah. No, I'm it was great. Cold day, but keep moving on. We got the new puppy who absolutely hates going out in the cold. So that's been a nightmare to deal with.
So she's a
Florida
Florida-born.
She is
And
Florida
raised.
bred, small, barely any, lab kind of coat. So
Mhm.
the potty training has been a little rough.
All three of
Rough,
our dogs
no pun intended.
come from Buffalo,
Ruff,
New York. So they were born into the cold, but
Rough.
now they're like they get out, do their thing, and come right back in.
Yeah. Sounds
So-
rough.
Yeah.
Not good. Not good. Dad jokes. So I wanted to do a little update here. So the three of us began the year together with a shared journey
Yeah.
of the 75 hard. We're sitting here at day 22, 23.
23.
The
I wouldn't
20,
know.
it's the 23rd. So 23 days in, I just want to do a little update. How it's going, how it's been.
Well, I had to push a pause.
Okay.
So literally the day we started, January 1st, I
For the record,
Stupidly
for the
injured
record,
myself.
we have a text chain that got pretty quiet last week.
Oh, it definitely was quiet.
well, I was on vacation, yes, but even I was contemplating like, hey, how can I move forward with this, and not potentially have an injury? So a long-term injury. So I ended up falling off of a playground
Oh, yeah. You did tell
as
me
I was
that
playing
story.
tag and thought I concussed myself. Just I'm already kind of accident prone, and this was like, all right, you're going
Usually
on.
when you concuss yourself, you don't think about much.
No, I know that, but I like blacked out for probably a second or two and woke up and like, okay, what just happened? Because it happened so quickly. I was like second level of the playground and I'm on the ground. So
Was it a direct fall on your head or was it the whiplash that did it?
it was almost directly on my back.
And then
And
your
I'm
head.
and when I did it, I was surprised that I didn't knock the wind out of myself. But then I realized the day after, I'm like, I really wrecked my shoulder because I could see where I scuffed up my elbow. And I'm like, how did I do that? Well, clearly that was the first point of contact. And then it kind of went like that. So I went and saw a doctor and they were like, yeah, you have like a stage 2, not
AC
fracture,
joint?
but like dislocation of your collarbone on your shoulder. So like, yeah, don't do anything. So
Oh.
that was like the 6th, and I'm like trying to push through it. And then I'm like, I got to take a break. Lauren was like, you can keep on going, but you're wincing when you put your shirt on. So
Just pain. That's just weakness leaving the body.
pain.
What were you doing on the playground?
Playing tag.
He
You
was-
said that.
Yeah, I was playing. She asked me to go and play tag with her, but I could have been like, and this was not a big play area, So I'm running up there halfway, like not really fitting as it is, and then I'm like, okay, let me jump down because you went down the slide and let me, beat you to the bottom. Well, I did.
Did you clip your foot? Like, how did you?
No, so I went to like jump off and put my foot on this like little, climb up wall, and there was a hole in the middle of it that I didn't know. So I go to put my foot and I just nothing
Your foot
there.
went through.
Yeah, it just went through.
One.
So the pause for 75 hard is the playground's fault. That's what we're saying.
Injury.
Yes. Injury.
I will
Injury
say,
related.
like starting it, because we've done it before, it was injury or sickness is often the
That's what
biggest
happened to me.
deterrence.
Yeah.
What happened to you?
I got sick for 2 days and I couldn't get out of bed. So that eliminated my ability to work out outside.
Okay. Well, when are you restarting?
I guess we're paused together. Is that what we're doing?
Well, I'm restarting.
You're gonna
February
restart?
1st.
When?
February 1st.
Okay.
I was hoping to have a celebration with all of you at the end of this, but here we are.
You better make it now because you've been doing a lot of trash talking. You
Just-
have no choice but to make it.
Just day in, day out. You know,
What was
I
your,
feel good. I
what
feel
was-
real good.
What was your record last time? You made it to 46 days?
46. I had a little kid at home. We had 3 kids, but we had our newest, and
Big walk.
so I got in a great, and we got in a great rhythm then, because every night I take him on a stroller jog, go run at a perfect like 3.5 mile loop. He'd be asleep when I got home. Megan loved it. I loved it. Great. The problem was if you miss a morning workout
You can't.
and then you're trying to do one, have your time between the workouts and then do the other one. I found myself running at like 11 o'clock one night.
Yeah.
I was like, cool, let's do it. And then the next night, then you can't
just
wake up early
compounded.
the next day and
compounding.
it compounds and you just kind of felt this domino effect. So it's really just in the morning.
Do you think you're going to be able to continue this? Or is this just a 75-day window? It's supposed to be a lifestyle change. That's what the idea is.
It's also supposed to be overly intense for 75 days. It's not supposed to be 75 extended by any means.
So you're supposed to do this for 75 days and then just go back to your old habits?
No, I don't think your old habits would be the goal. I think figuring out, man, what am I really capable of and what should a sustainable thing look like? Like, I feel like you do need recovery time, right? And so one of the things this time I'm trying to be much more intentional about is having some of those workouts that are more recovery,
active recovery.
active recovery kind of workouts. Like you've got to build those in. Otherwise, you're going to get beat up. You're going to get hurt. You're going to be, there's days where we get like really sore and it's like, okay, you got to kind of shift the thought process of I'm not 23 and I'm not going to go hard 2 times a day for 75 days in a row. That's not really sustainable. So, we've been doing like weighted backpack walks. I've been doing trying to,
Have you incorporated stretching? I feel like that's...
I don't really count that as like my workout per se, but like more yoga style stuff periodically.
And
but
if you
not,
look, the detail, they don't go, there's not like a prescribed, like, hey, you have to hit this many calorie burn, at a certain workout. But it's, I think it's building awareness of, hey, I'm doing something that's way outside my norm.
comfort
And
zone.
you have to have that body awareness. It's just kind of opening that up. So, like, to your point about when you're asking, like, what are the things that you're going to take on after you finish? Because I will finish. So
I like that.
I've realized, because even though I stopped physically because I couldn't do it, I still am drinking the water, not having a cheap meal, not doing, the alcohol. So I think for me, I don't really need as much like that sweets at night as I thought I did. And I think that's going to be a habit where I maybe have it, on a celebration. Same thing with alcohol. I'm like, I didn't really drink as much as it is.
Yeah.
So it was more of like, what could I use as a supplement? So like adaptogen drinks that don't have alcohol, but have like lion's mane and some of these other things where if you want something to sip on other than water, or at a party, okay, you can grab that rather than going for alcohol.
I've got my fill-in drink. I'm really enjoying actually.
Your what?
Mocktail.
My mocktail. I've never looked at a mocktail menu until recently, but
Love it.
I'm making them at home sometimes, or we're at a friend's house at night. I was like, becoming this, craft mocktail person, but it's like a mule, more of like a
You got it from the Wellborn.
mule with no alcohol
Ginger.
with, no, the kicker is, putting jalapenos in it.
Really? So
Jalapenos feel like a little kick in the face.
mhm.
It's like,
Has-
oh,
has that little
that's got a
burn?
little burn to
has
it.
a little burn,
you
like
know?
the whiskey.
Remind you of alcohol.
Yeah.
It does, but it's good. I'm like, I don't, so I think if anything, you come away from this and you're like, I can dramatically reduce consumption. The big kicker for me too is like where I feel like you get big wins as you come home, and it's like, I'd love to pour a glass of wine right now, but instead I'm going to go in the gym and crank out a workout. Man, you feel so much better after like that. For sure. Like when you're done, like that was a good decision. Although I didn't like it at the beginning.
It does something to your psyche.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And Lauren's kind of been staying on with me. She's like, okay, we're not doing really desserts. I mean, I'm like, you don't have to do it. But she feels like, okay, in order for you to be successful, I have to, at least help in that way. So, she's not drinking with me. So in desserts and stuff, like she's not buying it. We're not making it.
She drink by herself.
Well, I say that because she had a birthday.
She just drinks alone.
Yeah.
Sorry,
well,
Lauren.
she sometimes has like a glass of wine just by herself. But like her birthday was this past week, and so she had a drink, but I still had the mocktail. And to go to your point about the mule, I had the ginger beer with the nice accompanying stuff, and I didn't miss it. No. So
no, you feel better after. You feel better the next day.
The spice, is it the the jarred jalapenos that you just add in?
I had them like
you cut them,
chopped up, and
you just cut them and like
mull them or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool,
good.
What's the diet you selected, both of you? I want to know.
Mine is limiting bread and no desserts.
So no limited bread or no carbs.
I'm not saying I'm not going to eat carbs. It's just limiting throughout the day. I'm being intentional about not eating bread and then having no dessert.
Is that your kryptonite? Dessert?
Yeah, it's like any kind of pastry. Pastries are dangerous.
I've been trying to be more. Mine's more protein focused. So because I think when you start do crazy protein intake,
you're not going to want it.
You don't want the rice or whatever else is mashed potatoes or whatever. So I try and stay away from the white stuff, but it's more maxing out that protein intake because that solves more of those issues. And then it's not so like, every little thing is not a cheat. The goal is replace it with, this is the priority, right? And so when that's the priority, it's been really good.
Yeah, you're not focusing on, I'm not getting this. You're focusing on like, okay, how can I get, what is it? What is it for you? Like 220 grams of protein? Mm-hmm. Yep. Like that's the goal. So you're like, instead of eating that snack that I got to get another, protein to fill.
This morning was like 5 eggs and a steak. Awesome. So good.
Yeah.
Are you portion controlling? Like, are you doing 4 to 6 ounces?
No, I mean, it's more like, okay, what could I eat to get the protein? And then what's going to accompany with that?
More like, can my jaw sustain the efforts required to eat all the meat?
Unlimited amounts.
But smoothies, you start like a lot of your snacks, you can really, the jaw's a real thing. Like if you think you're going to get that much protein just from steak,
he's going out there with a vest, like a weighted vested walk with his like jaw trainer. Just going at it.
Caught in the wild.
So he's gonna have like a super sharp jaw by the end of this.
You guys don't have a jaw trainer?
No.
Oh, wow.
Please tell me you don't.
I'm not gonna say I don't.
Oh my God.
But I don't need it because I eat so much steak.
Wait.
What's it called? Mooing? That's the online term for it.
I don't know. I actually don't know.
Maddie?
Jawbone. Cool. All right. So just for accountability, you guys are restarting when?
Well, so I'm restarting in February 1st. So if Matt wants to join me in that,
I will join you.
Initiative.
Here's my question. We committed this time, rain or shine, because I was texting you when you went sick and said, hey, you got this.
No excuses.
You still can go. Because here's my belief.
Outside when you have the flu.
Here's my belief in 75 hard. Well, your fever comes down. That's when you go, right? Like you got to time it. I know how this works.
No excuses.
And it's more the like, hey, I have to just move my body.
Because the workouts have to be in relation to you, right? Like it's like playing golf. It's like it's your golf game related to that course. And so that's why it's like it appeals to everybody, because if you're not an active person otherwise, it's like your workouts don't have to be my workouts. If you're choosing to do 45 minutes of movement twice a day when you otherwise wouldn't have, to me, that's a big step in the right direction. That's going to progress in time.
It's a win.
So when you get punched in the face with an injury or an illness or something, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's like, there's a win there too. Like, how do I still just sustain?
And the athlete part of you is like, how is this constituted as a workout? Because I mean, I couldn't even do a push-up. My shoulder was just that bad. So I'm like, how can I actually feel like this counts as a workout?
I've torn my AC joint. It's actually really painful.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
So this pause has, and they said, hey, you don't need surgery. It's just time.
Grade 3 and above, I think you need surgery, but you said you were grade 2.
Yeah. So, he's like, come back and we can check it and see how it is. But I mean, since pausing, it definitely felt like it's getting back there. So I think
But they say 6 weeks.
We're sitting at the 23rd. I think by February 1st, and plus, kind of going light on that side forward is the best way.
Yeah. If you were rehabbing something too, like rehab's no joke. Like it takes work, So, I mean, I would say like intentional work on anything that you're doing to me is counting this. Okay, get one of them outdoors. All right, we got a guest, new guest.
What's up, bro?
All right, so you studied up before you got here, right?
Just tell him the truth. Tell me you didn't read it. Just tell him.
What's up, Eduardo?
What's going on,
How you
guys?
doing, man?
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, good.
Where's Eddie's
What did I
headphones?
miss?
He'll get some. Don't worry.
Dials.
We got Eduardo in here with us now. What up, Eduardo?
What's going on, guys?
You
Thank you
doing?
for having me.
Glad you can make it. You guys stood up today, huh?
Yeah, I had a client I was supposed to meet with second time. They just ghosted me. So
Yeah.
happens.
Their loss.
Right.
Their loss. They could have had a good guy in their corner. Well, hey, we were doing a little accountability session because we've been doing 75 hard, and some people have fallen off the bandwagon. These two.
No
so
fingers pointing.
You're getting started February 1st.
February 1st.
All right, you get time to prepare and roll. When's that finish you out?
I'm
It'd
on
be
board.
like-
I want
You
to
want
join
in?
this bandwagon.
Let's go.
Let's do
It
it.
is.
Really?
Yeah.
You know what it entails?
Yeah. I did it for like 25 days.
And what was
my
your
streak.
25-day stopping
Hiccup.
point? What was the cause? Justin had said it's either from sickness or injury. So
I think it was just alcohol.
He said I had a stressful day.
That was it. Wow.
Yeah. My friends, peer pressure.
Yeah.
After that, I was like, okay, I'll just
We need
give into some
so that's
snacks.
why we need more positive peer pressure the other way. Yeah.
Sure.
There was a quote I like. I was going to read it just as a finale to this conversation. If you want to lead the orchestra, you have to turn your back on the crowd. Let that sink in for a minute.
Hmm.
What does that mean?
You want to lead the orchestra.
Well, obviously the conductor is looking at the
His audience.
other art. No, he's looking at the artists. He's looking at the different
The
instruments to direct them. And he's not looking for validation of what the crowd thinks.
That's deep.
That's deep. So Eddie's friends were the crowd. You guys got to be the other side. Keep
So
it going.
you gotta silence either one way or another. Either you limit those people that are like, hey, I'm not going to support you in this goal when you said it's your goal, or just say, this is my rock that I'm going to die on for the next 75 days.
Right.
And you also not needing that support, right? Like, I don't care what you're doing around me. Like, this is what I'm doing, right? Like, leading the way in that is like, nobody gets to question it.
Right.
Because I'm not focused on what they're doing. I'm focused on what I'm doing.
Just being firm in your values and unapologetically
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. I'm not asking you to change. Now,
A lot of people
you
disappear.
want life
when you do that.
change. Great. Don't need them.
Fair.
It's like, hey, you can come celebrate me when I'm finished.
Yeah.
We can go out then, but this is where I'm at now.
All right. Let's jump into some real estate stuff.
Yes.
I heard that quote and I was like, that hits.
Where'd you see it?
I don't
You
know.
remember?
Getting ready with
not
that
exactly.
one.
But I've been thinking about it in regards to like, it's hard to be somebody that's initiating change, you know, like think about people who have made major moves, and whether it be like Elon and technology, or, you know, it's like people say, don't do it, can't do it. Car companies will never be successful because look at the rest of them that have been around 100 years are losing money still. Like, it's like all these reasons why you can't do it. Cool. You listen to those guys, you'll never do anything great.
Well, he was giving an interview, and, you know, they were like, what are you driven by? You know, and he completely disassociated the correlation between, like, am I driven by something? It's no, this is what I'm doing. Like, that's what I said. It's not about.
So his ability to prove people wrong wasn't in the.
It's more like, is it for him? Is it valuable enough to go after and do and complete? You know, so outside of like my desire or my passion or anything like that, he believes in that thing so much that the will to do it is out of the equation.
Right. I think that's a good point to anything we do in life. We're gonna, if you're an outlier, you're always gonna have people in your ear kind of telling you to do otherwise. You work too much, you need to slow down. I mean, same story with like Jeff Bezos and starting Amazon. You know, he was mocked because he was selling books. No one thought people would buy books online, but look, you know, one of the biggest companies in the world.
Yeah. And he, you know, that's a fun story because like his vision was same as, you know, Steve Jobs. I mean, their vision was 10 or 15 years ahead of what they were doing. So when they're getting hate at this level, they're like, you don't even know where this thing's going. You have no idea, you know, and that kind of visionary is rare, you know, but that visionary has got to keep themselves held above the small talk. So yeah, if we're going to do great things with even just something as simple as 75 hard, you kind of got to adapt that mindset just a little bit. It's good.
Yeah. And it's that season. So it's like, hey, this is not forever. This is the goal. Set it. Discipline.
Eddie, you stand out a little bit. 23, working for 5 years deep in this thing or more.
Right.
You don't do the traditional, maybe real estate agent route. You've done things differently. What's that been like? You know, and you definitely still stay true to your drum beat, right? Like, so how do you do that? How much time you spend thinking about it?
Oh, 24/7, man. I work relentlessly, and sometimes I even forget to give myself slack. So it's definitely been a learning process. But working with investors, I think, has actually been an advantage for me, especially in my younger years, because a lot of people are judgmental. They see a 19, 20-year-old kid and they think, you know, what does he know about real estate? But if I'm bringing numbers and facts to an investor, he doesn't care what you look like. He just cares that the deals make sense and that it can work. So, you know, I came with that intentionality, built my book of business of investors. And now that's primarily all I work with is investors, doing my own, you know, investment properties as far as flips, rentals, and hopefully wanting to get into the building side of it as well.
What made you target that business model? Like, what made you want to go into the investor route?
Yeah, man. It's funny. So when I was in high school, I started kind of doing research into different careers, you know, lost kid like anyone else. And I stumbled across real estate, saw it as a great avenue. But I knew the way to build wealth through real estate was through owning real estate, not just being a regular agent. But I had no background or foundation in real estate, no one in the industry, right? So I came on to Justin Core's team, great mentorship, but always with the intentionality of investing in my own real estate. And the best way to do that is through experience and through other people's money and, you know, working with other people who are actively doing it. Sure. So fortunately, because I had already worked in the industry for so long, by the time I started investing and I had the capital to do it, you know, my first investments were home runs from the beginning.
That's awesome.
That's really awesome. And I think one thing, you know, a lot of new agents that might be listening to this, something they often don't think about, you know, when you're talking about bringing deals to investors and stuff, is like, why would they just do it themselves? But the reality is there's this disparity of when you've started to accumulate and you have the capital that you need to invest in place, you also probably don't necessarily have the time to go hunting deals.
That's the kicker.
Right.
So you're filling that gap that they need, right? So I know it's interesting because people just kind of dismiss the idea that like they got money, they probably have an agent, they probably don't need me, you know? In reality, you're right. You're like, hey, I'm bringing you deals to the forefront. Like you
Deal's
gotta
a deal. It's money.
Yeah. Yep.
And you're the pathway to the deal. And then on the back end, you know, they're like, hey, yeah, you got to get paid. And for you working with an investor like that, their whole mindset is they're not going to be deterred by something that comes up inspection or even from the financing, because they all have that figured out. It's purely just, can I get the terms that I need in the deal to make it work? And then what do we need to do to get it closed?
Right. And with your traditional home sales, you have a lot of back and forth, you know. Let's say the wife walks a property for the 5th time and then ultimately decides, oh, I actually don't like the kitchen. It's not big enough. You're not facing that with an investor. You know, once their mind is made up for the most part, they'll follow through. We do typically do an inspection. If it's something major where it's going to be like structural, you know, you might get a cancellation, but the likelihood of that is pretty slim.
Yeah, you negotiate through that more times than not, right? Like
Exactly.
it's a money issue. So, hey, we can solve that.
Right.
The price just has to change.
Yeah, it's less. I mean, I wouldn't say that there's no emotion, but there's certainly less emotion.
Much less emotion.
And, you know, if the numbers make sense and just it feels right in that sense, then yeah.
Let's talk about the investor market here for a little bit. Time out. Maddie, I'm getting a lot of kind of weird feedback right now. I feel like I'm echoey. Am I to you?
I'm not hearing it.
I don't hear any echo.
Yeah, I think I'm better now. It just sounded really like I was in a big room. Which I am. Okay, cool. All right, so let's jump into some of the stuff that's going on in the investor world. So we have numbers out for December 2024 rental reports. Rents continue to fall as new construction outpaces demand. So a couple highlights here. December 2024 marks the 17th consecutive month of year-over-year rent decline for 0 to 2 bedroom properties in the 50 largest metros. We also talked last week about the 2-bedroom homes being the predominant, you know, was dramatically up in what's being built, which is interesting.
Yeah, and the overall shrinking of home size.
Right.
This also shows all unit sizes saw rent declines. So we're constantly seeing this rent decline. What does that mean, one, to investors? What does it mean to maybe the valuation of single family homes in the market as a whole? Like, what do we do with this information?
And just to preface, that is articles just talking about single family. Yes. Okay. So that correlates obviously with, you know, that specific investor, because it's completely different for the multifamily buyer, but just wanted to make that distinction.
However, there's always going to be a correlation between the multifamily, not buyer, but the multifamily rent and single family home rents too, right? We're going to see those go hand in hand, because what you're doing is there's other options in the market available. The other thing we're seeing is new construction. The article goes into the absorption rate being dramatically down for new construction that's being built, for how long it takes to actually be absorbed and rented. So we're seeing certainly a slowdown in terms of, I think, the pace of what we're going to see in terms of value and, you know, no rent growth at all.
Yeah. And so absorption is where you're saying, hey, a builder's, you know, would build it and they would expect it to be on market, let's say 4 months. Now it's taking 8 months for that same home to sell. So it's that time. And then when a builder's looking at
this to actually rent it up.
Yes. So in that instance, rented, you know, because there are builders that are building, you know, for rent communities. Mm-hmm. So that whole model, if, you know, you're stretching it across, hey, a builder delivers 100 units and they expect to be out of the community in 2 years and it takes them 4, like that level of exposure is huge.
Yeah.
How do you know, Eddie, you're working with an investor, like, you know, and we're seeing year over year rent reduction, you know, so if we go from $1,800 to $1,600, how does that impact what you guys are looking at, how you evaluate that property? And should we be expecting that to continue? You know, like, how do they evaluate a long-term purchase on that, from that standpoint?
Right. Well, first, I want to say I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing because we've had a housing shortage for so long, especially in the state of Florida. So we are starting to see prices come down a little bit. And even with rents, I just had a conversation with one of my investors who's bought maybe 6 or 7 properties with me now. And he's listing another one of his units. And he's like, what's going on? You know, we're not getting bites. A year ago, we were getting tons of offers. And unfortunately, there's so much supply now that it is causing a drop in the rental market, which in turn is also causing a drop in the value of the property because the way investors assess the value of multifamily, especially, it's by either your ROI or your capitalization rate. And if that goes down, ultimately, the value of the property goes down.
With that being said, we have not seen a reduction in the cost of ownership, like financing.
Right.
Taxes are up, like all these things are up. We're not seeing those things come down. We're seeing rents come down and we're seeing our expenses up. So from a valuation standpoint, is this creating and it seems to have been, but is this continuing to create a opportunity in the market for the big hedge funds to continue to enter the space? Like if you're a homeowner right now that says, I'm going to go buy something else and move and keep this as a rental, and I'm watching my taxes go up year over year, and I'm watching my insurance through the roof, and now I'm getting knocked a couple $100 a month in rent.
I mean, there's an erosion.
Like how long do I keep that?
Yeah, you can withstand it. Yeah, and it's a trigger point where if they're saying, hey, if I was to go and sell this, where else could I put it? And if you have equity locked into that property that's now a rental, how do you either access it? And there's only one of two ways. You either refinance, which refinancing is
not ideal right now.
Is not ideal, or you sell it. And you know, the pain of selling is, okay, I'm going to have to go through that, but where do I put it? You know, and where is that investment going to have that built-in return? Because if in the short term, your overall appreciation annually is diminishing. But if you can live through that, then, I mean, we all know the annualized appreciation of single family real estate, you know, what that can compound and what that percentage looks like in let's say a 5-year hold. So if you can live through that short period of time, then you'll make out. But it's that pressure right now to be able to make everything work.
Right.
I would say, to me, it seems like, and this has been the case for a couple of years, single family rentals have become far less desirable asset class than just about anything else, right? Like, so many people have sustained it because they bought it in 2012, 2013, 2018, 2019, 2020, when either prices were really good or their rate was really good, right? And so you've got reduced, you know, and so people get locked into this interest rate trap of like, I couldn't go do this somewhere else. But the challenge is like, man, there's so many other moving expenses other than your financing costs, you know, which is what's crazy about it all. So I always look at it with people like, what is your return on your current equity, right? When the market's made this major run and now you're sitting at this point, one, if that run continues and you sold, you'll feel like an idiot. But if it stays flat and you have that equity sitting there, then the equity is somewhat stagnant, right? And so, you know, there's two parts when you're accounting for these things. It's the equity and the appreciation, and then it's also the cash flow, you know, the cash on cash return.
Yeah. And if you can keep a portion of that equity and still have access to it, that's the biggest key is, can you get a HELOC? You know, in past year and a half, maybe 2 years, HELOC has become less desirable for banks. You know, they're essentially calling lines of credit, you know, and saying, hey, we're not going to extend this anymore, or we'll do it, but we're going to double our percentage that we had before. So that option has been drastically reduced.
And to Justin's point, I don't think we're seeing the days anymore where people are making, you know, $1,000 on rent each month. Unfortunately, that's not the case. You might be breaking even, making a couple $100, but where you're really making your money is on the appreciation and the pay down of that mortgage. So it's a long-term play.
Yeah. And if you're actively in it, you know, you can take the interest deduction, you can get the depreciation. Right. You can, if you can qualify for it, then you have that real estate and operator manager status. So you can use that. So a lot of people that if you're a doctor, if you're a high W-2 earner, you can supplement your income and reduce your taxable income by having that level of activity. So it's not so much do the dollars and cents of, do I make a little bit of money? As long as I'm breaking even, but I have that vehicle to do that against my other income, that's where it makes sense. But they're going to be sensitive to that because they're not going to want to have a negative and having all these ohms that they're, because at the end of the day, you still have exposure of, I either have a tenant or I don't. And if it feels like, hey, I have a tenant less the time, if you have more exposure to vacancy than you did, you're going to be like, I have other options now. And I mean, there's a few investors that I work with that they're going to be transitioning out of single family because of that reason. Because the headache, the fact that it's an occupied residence for someone, and some people as a renter mentality, they take care of things or they don't, it just kind of depends on the tenant. But it's the occupying, that's a home. You fall under scrutiny of, certain statutes and stuff where you're moving to strictly commercial property. It's for business, it's for, some other type of use. Yeah. And you can pass on expenses, that you would incur as an owner that you can't do in residential because you're kind of capped because you still have to play within that market.
I think that's where the market in residential is shifting to being more desirable for the BlackRocks, the major funds, because twofold. I think there's more people that are still renting, right? A lot of that, you're in that demographic, right? A lot of your generation is going to rent until the average home buyer last year was 36 years old. First time home buyer was 36 years old. So you've got this big demographic of working Americans that are deciding, hey, I'm going to rent this 0 to 2 bedroom, model that's being built. The challenge with renting something that, maybe was somebody's first home that they've kept as a rental is that, well, what happens if they decide they want to sell it? Okay, time to move. What happens when there's a major expense going on with it and they can't afford to do the work? Okay, we're kind of at a loss for how do we handle that, right? So it's not like living in an apartment, but you got people who maybe it's a couple or roommates or you have a dog or whatever, and you need to live in a single family. I feel like the hedge funds are, as much as we dislike it because they're affecting value of other single family homes, they're filling a void that was needed of creating good single family home rental communities that they're going to continue to rent year after year after year, right? So it's kind of we're in this like weird place of like love-hate with these folks because they're serving the market where it needs to be served.
Yeah. And BlackRocks and some of these other big hedge funds, they're looking at not only just this specific demographic, they're looking at how does this generation, and it's it could be that type of generation is delaying, family formation. And it could be, some things that happened to that generation. It's also, each generation has their own, kind of personality and, how they act and how they buy and what their, overall preferences are. So to me, there was, student loans, and that delayed them moving out of their parents' house and, and the job market the way it is and kind of an overtelling of where schooling, the public school system and universities are not necessarily equipped to help deliver a workforce that meets the demands for today's economy. So, that was all kind of figured out. So BlackRock's coming in saying, okay, we're seeing all of this and saying, okay, we can buy those properties up and create rentals, knowing there's all these things that are happening in today's generation.
So where do we think the other opportunities are? We got a new since we were sitting here last, we've had the inauguration. We've got how many Trump executive orders right out of the gate, making waves fast.
Came swinging.
I mean, he had time to prepare, probably the most prepared possible, day one administration you could be. I just don't know,
I mean,
who else has that opportunity of having been in the office before, having 4 years to get your team and know what you should have done last time.
I said this earlier in the week. It was like, he's effectively been like all of these issues, it's not like he's paused and like, obviously he went and played golf, but he's been campaigning since he left office all the way to today. So it's like he's been in the role in some capacity, since 2016.
Yeah.
So to me, it was also telling that he took the presidency and the inauguration as kind of a a spectacle in a way that no other president's done. So whether you dislike him and don't like his policies, but you have to at least give him his due respect for the amount of things that he can do in a given day. I mean, we were watching the national championship game, and he had a little spot.
That was
recorded spot. I'm like
prepared.
So it's when he has the mic and he seizes it and doesn't want to let it go, and there's something to be said about that.
So what are we looking at for the outlook? Obviously there's a lot of his, a lot of the stuff he's getting slack on now for some of his executive orders is, it's pausing new stuff happening so that he can get the right people in place and really start to, initiate the agenda. But what is that agenda? If we're trying to, cut government spending, trying to start to balance the budget, what does that do to what we're going to realize maybe in housing? How do you get housing price and insurance price and all these things under control? Do we have in the short term or long term outlook? What are we expecting?
I think this is going to have a good effect long term wise for the real estate market. We're already starting to see some stabilization. Markets aren't as unpredictable as they were before. Yeah, rates are a little bit higher than we'd like. But I think as a long-term play, just his overall financial strategy and the things he's implementing are going to be good.
I think overarching, he's like, let's get a handle on what our spending is. And I mean, even in his inauguration speech, he's saying, I'm going to bring back energy in manufacturing, which is and have tariffs. So he's looking at that as a means for the economy to create income. And that's how we'll deal with, if we're reducing spending, being able to grab additional revenue, and then using that as a way to reduce cost. So going after, the cost, just general cost of living. If you can put some initiatives there that would bring that down, then that filters through, and people have more money in their pocket, and that has. The cost of things has less of an impact if you have more money in your pocket.
I wanted to hit real, kind of as we're kind of dialing in on the future and what's happening here, talking about how they're going to start to cut spending. They're already looking at it. Actually, if you go follow Doge on X, it's every 10 minutes, it's a new post. It's like, did you know, like, here was one from yesterday, blew my mind. We're printing like, I'm going to mess this number up, but it's Trump era, so I can do a little, creative accounting. $780 million a year we spend printing pennies. Guess how much it costs us to print a penny?
It's like 4 cents a penny.
Three pennies for every 1 penny is our cost. Makes a lot of sense, right? So, but how many little things like that are wrapped up in the way just government's done it? We're going to keep printing pennies. Obviously, nobody looks up to smell the roses and think like, why are we still doing it this way?
Yeah, how many pennies are in circulation?
Who wants a penny?
That number is dropping dramatically.
Right. How long has it cost at 3 pennies?
Well, certain parts of Europe have completely eliminated cent.
You just round up to 5 cents.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Now, does that in fact create inflation? I don't know. It's like
scale.
Yeah,
candy inflation.
But printing penning a penny for 3 pennies probably also has factored into our inflation costs.
Yeah, it was crazy to me when we were at the resort in the Bahamas. On the bill, they would just automatically round up. Like it would, every restaurant was there. It was just like
flat dollar amount.
It was a flat cents. So if it was, let's say, you had 63 cents, they're just going to round up to 70. Like,
I'm sure that adds up a lot over time.
Oh yeah. I mean, think about the number of customers and the cents that you're rounding up. I mean, that's an additional revenue source. It's almost like an acorn for them,
Good for business.
The roundup.
The roundup acorn. Yet you're just getting taken advantage of in that way.
Do we then start to think, well, what if scrap the bills in general, like, and move into a almost fully digital? I live a digital economic life. Like, I very rarely have cash anymore, much less pennies. It's like, what do you even do with them when you have them? You have to take a pocket full to go buy a piece of gum. So yeah, I mean, how much money would we save? Avoiding the print. And who knows? I don't know what the pros and cons are. It's a whole conversation, but I love that somebody's having that conversation now as much as anything. The thing I was thinking about, because it's easy for us, I think, to start to relate the way the government spends and fixing the government budget in relation to how we personally do, right? Like, and the idea of getting out of debt. And so we're deeply in debt, but we're continuing to make promises that drive us farther and farther into debt, and then therefore print our way out of that to sustain. But so two parts that we have to look at, right? One part is start to cut the expenses. And I think that's what kind of Doge's focus is, right? But I've heard a lot of experts talk about it, and I take the experts with a grain of salt, kind of thinking about it. But we can't cut our way out of the hole that we're in, like $27 trillion or something like that. Like we're not going to cut enough $1 million, $10 million, $100 million projects
to make up for it,
to actually get us out of that. However, what you do start to do is you start to grow the economy as a function of that, right? So we cut, that's part one. We also are putting policies in place that are going to grow and expand the economy as a whole. As the economy improves, our cost of debt will then start to go down, right? As we get a hold of interest rates. If you were holding if you bought an investment property and now you can suddenly refinance and your costs go down on holding that, your investment has now improved, right? And so you actually get to then, if you keep spending that, maybe it was $200 you're affecting a month, you get to, and say rents are on their way back up. Now you're taking that $200, you're throwing it towards your debt, and you're paying your debt down faster, right? And so that's kind of how I'm visualizing this thing. And then who knows how long it actually takes to. But I would love to see the plan of expansion, starting to be able to recast bonds, because they recast every 5, 10, you have longer term bonds, but so they're constantly recasting these, getting our cost of debt down as well. So it's a function of how do we get our GDP up? How do we bring more dollars into the US? How do we find other sources of revenue? Tariffs would be one.
Yeah.
And again, I'm no expert that knows the pros and cons of that. I think energy is the biggest impact is going to be on, just CPI numbers. Watching the cost of transport of goods and creation of goods come down is going to dramatically lower the cost of living. So I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to kind of see how all this rolls out.
Trump's super big on energy and tapping into all the resources that we have here, not paying for it. I think that's huge because it really does all begin with energy, production of goods, products, farming, everything. So when you get the cost of energy down, everything else will trickle.
Everything.
Right.
Everything's affected by it. The other thing is they announced this $500 billion AI infrastructure investment. So I didn't realize, until as of late, the amount of part of this is a real estate play. Like, you don't think about AI needing real estate, but the amount of data centers that are required to actually allow AI to function is massive. I don't know if anybody's driven by this, if you're heading from here towards Winter Park, you pass like where Eatonville is, and there's that big, massive building right on the road there. It's like funny colored and kind of looks very modern and whatnot. But apparently it's just this massive data center. I had no idea, but they're putting them in.
It's taken them forever to actually deliver it.
Yeah.
Because it's built up. They have the parking underneath, and then all the space, on top of it for that. But I think the infrastructure for actually having real estate, but also the connectivity, and the running all of these lines that interconnect with some of those data centers is the big play too.
Mm-hmm.
I know that they're doing that out at the airport. Is creating these like hubs where it's this. Let's say it's a 1,000 square foot room, but it's like the hub and the tap into this section of this massive fiber optic lines that go from one side of the airport to the other, and in essence they're going to have to create that network.
Yeah, just for information to be able to move freely. But what they're talking about, I mean, the benefits of AI, and I'm thinking about it as they are starting to replace federal jobs. As you're getting rid of a workforce who's done the same job for the last 45 years and done it at the same level they always have. It's like, man, some of that research, being able to utilize AI and replace those jobs with research with AI at the highest level. I'm just thinking about, like, as there is, medical is one example of that, right? If you've got all of these studies throughout the years, nobody can really put those all together and make sense of it all. In AI, like how many diseases or mal effects of certain medicines or pharmaceutical studies or whatnot have the little correlations that nobody's been able to put a finger on, but AI is going to start to call it out in real time, right? And I just wonder how many other things we're going to see, start to take effect and be replaced with just some AI, kind of thought on the matter.
Yeah, I mean, just from the real estate, aspect of kind of putting a freeze on hiring, calling, the federal employees back to work and there was an article that I read mid last year that of the government buildings that are owned and or leased by the government, how much of it is actually occupied? It's like less than 50% of the office space that they use. So, I mean, there's going to be there's likely buildings that they either have control by lease or they own that, they're going to release to the private sector because they're just not using it. So part of that call to bring all the federal employees back and say, hey, how are we utilizing our space? And, that's on the federal level, that's how the market's reacting to office. In the same way, the private sector is doing the same is how do we utilize the space that we have? And I mean, this is a kind of a rolling theme from COVID of how do we build in flexible workspace, collaboration workspace in a headquarters, with the potentiality that, hey, if we have to, do distancing or whatnot, you're creating that environment in your offices while knowing too, not everyone needs, a truly private, four-walled office anymore. That's kind of antiquated.
Is potentiality a word?
Sure.
You could, can you fact check that, Maddie? Potentiality. It seems redundant. Seems like potential would.
Potentiality.
I'm curious.
Maybe
now.
it's
very curious.
An active version of
potentiality.
Sounds like a word.
Not a word.
It is not a word.
No.
Wow.
It sounded great.
All right.
Well, can you make a suggestion to the dictionary for Kevin right now? Let's just see if we can get that included next year. All right. I love AI. It's scary to people because it's replacing things that they feel is going to be them. And I think you either embrace it knowing that there's certain things we don't have to spend the time on anymore and you use it to your advantage, or you're going to be watching from the outside.
And the United States has led in so many initiatives of advancing technology. And I just love the fact that it's being talked about, because having that, 10 years, 15 years down the road, if this project is able to go through, it's just going to just set the American people up for being able to have another economy to work off of.
Right.
I think too, having the best minds in AI too, as a part of this, it's not just the information you give it. They're going to be creating tasks, essentially full robotic workers in certain areas of the government. And I think
yeah. And it's, when it was in 95, 96, 97, when like, okay, what's this thing called the internet? I feel like that is this level of impact across any industry, that's, and I think people understand that it has that level of impact that's going to go across any industry and be kind of a new way of living.
Remember when we used to say, what's the website? And you'd be like, HTTP:// www, the whole thing, as if it was like, you don't remember. Eddie, you don't remember that. I just remember being in middle school and you'd have to type it out. HTTP. Neither here nor there. Funny. You don't remember. You don't know. You grew up with it.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like the constraints that we had. You had the one dial up. You only had one home computer.
AOL.
The fact that that's expanded. Within the last 2 decades, like that. So, this is just another iteration of how the internet, because now it's accessing the internet. How that can be used essentially in real time, solve problems.
Chat room.
Yeah.
AOL chat rooms. Were you in those?
We're not going to talk about that. Question for you about AI, because I know you're a big fan. There's a human element to the advice you give to your clients. And I'm a big fan of AI, but I just feel like it's missing something. You go to ChatGPT, you put in whatever information you want to put. Why would I buy a $300,000 house in this economy? It spits out information. That information came from someone that just whatever goes into ChatGPT, whatever tons of information gets populated in there. What about your personal experience is eliminated from whatever information is not spit out of ChatGPT? If you've been in a current situation,
that's good. Good question. I think I can relate it to. Let's relate it to something different than real estate for a minute, because I've been. Me and Megan have had some.
I was going to say you're seeing
fights on this
internal on the medical side.
Well, we've had fights on this thing because I've seen. It's one thing to be like, you never do what I do, and that's a very proud place to be, right? You can never give the advice I would give. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe. But it's going to give unbiased, clean advice if it has the right information. So we've been talking about this for 6 or 7 years when it started to become a thing. And I was like, it's going to come to the medical field, right?
Well, Larry Ellison, what was it, 2 nights ago, was out in front of the White House with a few others talking about the infrastructure in that plan. But he's saying, it's how does that correlate? And I think that's where it's going to be pushed to first is medical. Like when a doctor is going into going to be meeting with a patient, they're going to get essentially a briefing from AI of all these conditions and what's the
briefing is good. The briefing is only good as the information you can give it. So here, the world we're in now.
That's the kicker. How do you know what information is given?
This is the kicker, right? You're wearing a watch. No, you're not wearing a watch.
I'm wearing one.
A lot of people wearing Apple Watches. A lot of Apple Watches are tracking your heart rate, breathing. You've got a lot of your medical history, in your health app. You've got now they're doing O2 levels. These things, the newer ones are getting your oxygenation levels. They're getting a couple of things that they're picking up arrhythmias. They're picking up all kinds of things. Like those are real-time data things that if you call an ambulance and you get in the back of an ambulance and they can pull that information and know exactly all those details. Now, couple that with your whole medical history that's already in the system, right? A lot of these are now working off of a same system. So they know when you've been to the hospital last, they know what you came in for. updates, right? Your past medical history, your family, grandfather died of this disease and heart, high blood pressure, whatever it is. So here's what I'm picturing. I'm picturing that you're getting picked up. The guy in the ambulance, the EMT, is taking a visual on what's going on. Okay, you're coming in, you're complaining of chest pain right here, and here's the other things you're experiencing. Cool. They're putting all that in. Now, AI is not only taking the visual and the
current real time
thing, but it's also doing it on the backdrop of everything that's ever happened to you medically. And so now, are you rolling in with more information to see the doctor with a better projected plan or a worse projected plan? You're 100% getting a, even if the doctor just had all that information, you're getting a better plan. But now, here's where it changes. It changes when insurance companies start to adapt to the fact that this is not a subjective opinion of a doctor anymore. It is a prescribed next best step. Because if all of that information and every, let's say every journal, medical journal and study says that this is the next best step based on that information, this is the proposed solution for your problem, and the doctor does that, you can't sue that doctor anymore when there's a negative effect, or you're going to start to see that reduce a lot less without something completely outside. So as soon as you can start to get rid of malpractice and the lawsuits that come as a function of malpractice, you're going to see medical costs come down dramatically. And so everywhere there's major dollars being spent on negative outcomes, like picking buying the wrong house or choosing the wrong financial decision, and you can say that there is a black and white next best step, you're eliminating room for error. And so there always will be exceptions to that rule. There's always something that none of that information led to, and the person had, or they were withholding the fact that they had done cocaine last night and they just didn't tell anybody.
That's a big part.
There's always those exceptions, but don't those happen anyways? That's my point, is like, there's things that patients don't tell doctors anyways. So, all right, so we're late. So to me, that's far more complicated than anything we're doing financially or medically, right? We're doing it with spreadsheets. Sure, every house has little exceptions to it, right? Like, the house had a structural issue. I mean, got it. There's always exceptions. So we're still going to have a human component. But if we can prescribe, okay, this is the best decision you're going to make right now. Here's the estimated value of this property. Make sure your next steps include structural inspection, They're making the best move they possibly can make in that moment. So how do we use that? We've got to make sure we're giving it all the best possible data, that we know that, hey, this is the next best possible step. And so, I think if it can deal with that, it's going to be able to solve a lot of much bigger issues.
AI is definitely going to provide us all much better quality of life. It's just how you utilize it and jumping on the bandwagon early.
Go deep. I have so much fun taking like massive, anytime there's something with like a lot of data sets, big spreadsheets, you can take a 20-page CSV file and upload it and look for relations and all kinds of things and spitting out, things that you wouldn't have otherwise been able to do with that information, whether it's real estate based data or financial data or whatever else. We were selling a property that, had a business associated with it, and just their books were questionable. But hey, give me all your raw data. Okay. Because the way it was, everybody bookkeeps differently, right? Mm-hmm. It's one thing for you managing it. It's another when you're trying to sell it. It's another when you're trying to own or operate it. So taking that full, 3 or 4 years of data, throwing it in GPT and reorganizing, and now look at it. Okay, now reorganize, and then give it the next best step that you feel. And then the best way to do it is to then say, is there anything I'm missing? Is there another way I should consider this data set? Because here's what I'm trying to achieve. And it's going to tell you that too. It's going to say, have you considered this option and this variable and this and that? And you're like, oh crap, you're pretty freaking smart. So fun.
Yeah, it's like having a professional expert in that specific area, because it's pulling direct from information that those people have had to look at and consider. So, I mean, to your point about, how, and from the medical side is, they're going to have purpose-built AI built with, and they're going to be able to eliminate, what certain information, they're going to, in terms of like when they're pulling an initial like synopsis of the patient and giving a briefing, they're going to know that it's pulling from certain records, only medical journals and everything else. So they're going to be able to tailor that. Everything has been approved by that hospital for what this AI is generating, so that it matches. So there's going to be that curating of information.
So cool. I'm a big fan. We got to keep. You just got to make sure you're spending time in it, which is crazy. But like, if there's, I love the old book, 4-Hour Workweek, where he talks about what, kind of getting more efficient. Eliminate. If there's stuff you're doing that you don't need to be doing, just don't do it. Cut it out. Right. Mm-hmm. Eliminate it. Delegate it, or automate it, and then delegate it. So eliminate, automate, delegate. This is effective automation and or delegation, right? So how many small jobs you do repetitively, that AI can start to step in that place and do? There's so much that we got to make sure we're spending more time getting equipped there. Only going to get better. All right. What else you got for us, Kevin?
Yeah. So this article goes into commercial real estate and what are the trends to watch for? What are the different property types that are going to have some transition, some change, and it's going a lot with with the AI component. Is they're with one administration coming in and then going out. It's one of the property types and or even kind of a business / policies is reshaping life sciences. So life science, let's say these biotech companies, if they're going out and using certain AI to tackle a certain disease or like testing for certain things. There's a big run up right now in taking along your personal, your health, and you can go out and have the subscription service and and understand all your biomarkers and have all of this, so that has been way more prevalent now than it has been, just because there's that putting that data in your hands that then you could use and control. It's not being relied upon the doctor or certain people to tell you. So it's how life sciences use real estate. So like the medical city here locally, there's certain hospitals and specialized labs that have that. So how does real estate transition to meet the need of this convergence of lab and tech and everything? And then there's the other point of the articles on the border. So with Trump coming in, the push is going to have more manufacturing. So how is manufacturing straddling between Canada, United States, Mexico, United States? What is that all going to look like? Well, there's going to be more demand for industrial and for purpose-built manufacturing here stateside, especially when the tariffs are going to be hitting. And he's openly said, I'm going to tariff 100% of any vehicles that are made outside the United States, specifically in Mexico. So, that's going to have a direct effect. And the other title of acoustic balance. So when you have then the shift of office and being more flexible and collaborative, well, how do you balance if it's not a traditional like fixed space where you have an office? How do you balance acoustics and being able to have the Zoom meetings and being able to have these other breakouts? How do you manage sound within a space that's supposed to be open and functional? So, I know we looked at it for the Woodruff is, do you have kind of like your call booths, or do you have certain areas? And a lot of headquarters are incorporating these breakout areas where you can go off and have a private call or have a Zoom meeting and be one-on-one or one and many through the computer, and then be able to jump into a team activity. So it's reshaping the use of office, and in turn, that's going to have a lot of effect on square footage and how new buildings are built in order to accommodate for that change in work type. And the last point of the article is still there's going to be more of this we space. So outside of, let's say, a headquarters or a company working in that same way, there's going to be individuals that are going to make a decision to work within an environment that's collaborative and not siloed to, I have my own office and that's it. So there's going to be a push for, as people want to have more flexibility in how they work and when they work, and the use of office is going to be that same.
So what are we seeing as, obviously had this call back to work, federally.
Mm-hmm.
Other folks are still figuring out how to use office. We obviously did that dance for a long time. There's a lot of buildings that are effectively sitting empty a couple of days a week. People are coming in. I mean, I know it's like over and over and over again. You hear these stories of, but what do you do with these old offices? They were built as offices in the 70s and 80s. I know there's certain markets, out in California, and I bet you'll see more of this now with the fires that are trying to pivot these offices to multifamily. The challenge is taking an office and putting in bathrooms and kitchens in a concrete building is a nightmare. Like extremely expensive.
Yeah, I mean, it forces you, if it's a multi-story, it forces you to use one of the elevator shafts as a chase space for all of those utilities. And so that's one way, but then it eliminates a usable exit.
Is the juice worth the squeeze? That's the question. Yeah. I think you've got to be in very high price markets where those condos are now worth a couple $1 million versus, or rent for that kind of valuation.
Yeah.
Versus like, if you did it here in Orlando, we'd be like, well, I can go around the corner and get another condo for $300.
Mm-hmm. It's that uber dense, constrained, and it's happened. I mean, in Manhattan and in LA, where there has been conversions, in old industrial warehouse buildings that, are more open and conducive for it. There's been that shift. But it still comes to the question, and then the higher price points, that makes sense, because the price point able to dictate that level of cost. But there's still going to be that issue of affordability and having affordable housing. And again, that goes back to what we talked about earlier: is who are the players that are creating this rental nation? And really right now, when prices are going up, interest rates going up, that it's playing in the hands of these big hedge funds that are filling in the gap for having affordable-ish housing.
Do we start to see some of these big, high rises turn into data centers? I mean, it's far easier to run, data lines than plumbing lines.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, do we start seeing construction, which is interesting because you're eating up, high priced real estate in super central business districts. But the benefit of that is most of the central business districts already have
all that infrastructure,
the high speed infrastructure and stuff there, right? Versus, if you're building it out on the perimeter, maybe a little harder getting your cable lines and,
Yeah. And the nondescript nature, if you able to do that in and amongst, it somewhat insulates you from potential attack. If it's in this high dense area and this, this building that's surrounding by everything else, maybe, physical attack, maybe not so much cyber attack, but certainly physical attack.
What if it's like the movies, like somebody's going to break in and just go put a USB in to something and then shut down everything? You think it's like that? Do you think they even have USB ports like that anymore? Or these things are just surely not.
With quantum computing, have you guys heard about that at all?
Heard about it.
All right. So with quantum computing, they can run algorithms billions and billions of times, almost infinitely. So it's creating zero security. but the level that it's functioning on is government. It's very high level. It's not in the hands of the masses. So that'd be interesting to see.
Well, that's what they're saying with people that have like been locked out of their Bitcoins. You've seen so many stories where this guy, like, he had bought a couple Bitcoins, when it was nothing. And now it's worth like $10 million or something. And he can't find the access code. Yeah. But if you try it a certain amount of times, it like,
please shuts it.
Yeah. I don't know how any of that works, but they're saying there may come a day when the computing is such that it could actually
tap back in.
I don't know. That's out of my, I don't even understand it. Try to, but I don't. It's been fun, guys. Anything else for before we wrap it up here? What's on your mind, Matt? Tell me about Mortgage World.
I wasn't thinking anything mortgage related. I was just thinking about the AI when there's a bunch of algorithms that can essentially make nothing secure.
Basically runs algorithms infinitely.
What if someone
passwords
hacks into an AI infrastructure and puts false information in there, and someone's going in and trying to get information that's black and white, like you keep saying, but it's not at that point.
I think there's a logic flow in a lot of this, right? So, but that's the benefit of having multiple companies play in the AI space, is you're going to have redundancies, that are there, which is super important. If you had one thing that was the purveyor of all knowledge, you're limited to that. Therefore, if somebody, paints the logic flow. So I don't know how it works. I just know, I agree with you. That's scary.
That's scary.
If it does give you wrong information, but there's certain things that are always true. Like 1 and 1 is 2. You start seeing these things, and that's a very simplified view of like, some things are going to, still have standards of information. Like you can go fact check it yourself, which is still important. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say to that point. So the thing with quantum computing is we're not going to see organized crime or illegal. We're not going to see organized crime or illegal people using it. What we're really seeing is governments starting to implement this against other governments. So Russia and China, other big players, that's where it really becomes a national threat or security threat, is with these governments. Because to your point, the data centers and the infrastructure that it takes to run these, it's huge. It's not going to be, gangs or small people running these.
Yeah. But they could, easy to tap in and run on some of the networks, right? Like the little guys can do a lot more than they could have done 10 years ago, for sure. But you're right, to do it at the highest level, to be able to, quantum compute, against other nations. Yeah, that's a different story for sure.
Yeah. Scary stuff.
Yeah. Well, we'll leave it there, guys. It was fun. We'll solve the world's problems next week.
Yeah.